Hey, in our last video, we covered Genesis chapter 13, well, most of Genesis chapter 13, down through somewhere around verse 12, 13. Today we're going to be covering the remainder of Genesis chapter 13, in which Abram is actually separated from Lot. We talked about why that was in the last video, why he was being separated, why God planned on him being separated and was pushing him towards that, how Abram responded to that, and how that showed a growth of faith. We also saw that there is something mentioned here in verse 13 of the chapter 13, verse 13, that where Lot settled, the men of in Sodom, in the valley around Sodom, that the men of Sodom were wicked exceedingly and sinners against the Lord. Now, they don't explain how necessarily they were wicked exceedingly and sinners against the Lord at this point, but it doesn't really matter, because if you are, you are, and if you aren't, you aren't. The exact method you use to sin against the Lord isn't generally important. So, once Abram had exhibited this faith that God had grown in him, and he had separated from Lot, and had taken, in human terms, the riskier path in order to follow more closely what he saw as the will of God, and was the will of God, God spoke to him for the third time. Really, it might be the fourth, but as far as really direct speech, it was the third time God spoke directly to Abraham. It had been years since God last spoke more than a single sentence to Abram. He promised this time Abram the land and freedom within it. Let's read it and see how this differs from how God spoke to Abram the prior two times. The Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, "Now lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land which you see, I will give it to you and to your descendants forever. I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth, so that if anyone can number the dust of the earth, then your descendants can also be numbered. Arise, walk about the land through its length and breadth, for I will give it to you." Then Abram moved his tent, and came and dwelt by the oaks of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. So he moves to Hebron and builds a new altar. A few things. One, God tells him he has freedom within the land. Now, in some sense, this can be seen as a risk for Abram. He doesn't have a settled land. He doesn't have alliances around him. He doesn't have any of the security or things that we would look for as security as humans. A home, friends, extended family, all the safety nets we build around ourselves as human beings. He doesn't have any of those things. What he does have is freedom within the land and a promise from God, who he believes completely. Well, we'll see it later if he believes him completely, continuously, but right now he believes him. And a promise from God that that land is going to be his and his descendants. So, there's some quid pro quo. I mean, there's some give and take here. In human terms, Abram's giving up a lot. In spiritual terms, in terms of following God, Abram's getting way more than he's giving up. So, the second thing we need to notice is that God is reiterating and expanding on his earlier promise. What were his earlier promises? Well, he said that I will make you a great nation. He also said, this is the land I will give to your descendants. In this case, he's saying that not only will I make you a great nation, not only will I give this land to your descendants, there's no caveats here, Abram. I'm not going to give you a few descendants and they will start a nation and that nation will become great and it will be a blessing to the world or whatever. He's not throwing any wiggle room into that promise. God's being really forthright here, and he says, your descendants are going to be numberless in human terms. You won't be able to count them. No one ever will be able to count them all. So, also, he said, wherever Abram can see or walk, God is going to give that land to his descendants. Basically, anywhere Abram goes, it's going to be his descendants' land. It's not limited to that one place where God said, hey, this is the land I'm going to give your descendants, which I believe was, up in Shechem. And that's where God originally said, this is the land I'll give to your descendants. It's the first time God mentioned he was going to give Abram descendants. Now he's saying he's going to give him so many descendants, nobody can count them. He's also saying that it's not just that one spot up in Shechem, it's all the places you've been, all the places you're going to be, rather. From now on, wherever you walk, wherever you look, it's all going to belong to your descendants. So, it's not just the land at Shechem or between Bethel and Ai where God had spoken to him before and he'd sacrificed to God, but it's all of the land he's hit. So his promise of making Abram a great nation became a promise of descendants so numerous they can only be compared to the dust of the earth. And this is really a lot more pertinent when you realize that Abram is probably in some kind of desert mountainous country where he's surrounded by dust. God doesn't give application lessons that don't apply to people, that they can't figure out generally, unless he's trying to hide something. And he does that sometimes, but in this particular case, he's trying to show Abram his heart. So he gives something Abram's going to get. He's like, look around you. What do you see? Dust. Can you count the dust around you? Can you count the dust piled into mountains that you're standing on? Can you count that? Because I'll tell you right now, there's nobody on earth who can. And I know how much dust there is. I know how many grains of dust there are. And that's how many descendants you're going to have, Abram. You're going to have all the descendants, basically. It was a huge, huge promise. So Abram moved to Hebron and built an altar to the Lord there. All right. A few other things that we need to realize here. The first thing is that God is giving him more information than he has previously. What did God tell him in his original promise? He said he would give him land, make of him a great nation, make his name great, and said he would be he said he would make Abram a blessing. He said he would be his protector. Let's see. He says, "I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you, I will curse, and in you all of the families of earth shall be blessed." Excuse me for the stutter. God's promising to be his protector, his provider, and he's promised to do something for Abram that he never promised to do for anybody else before, and that's that through Abram, through this one man, everyone on earth would be blessed. So Abram immediately sees some value in this and goes off with God. Now, what didn't God promise him? He didn't promise him a single descendant. He said he'd make him a great nation, but that doesn't mean he's going to give him a child. All right? Let's get a little farther on where Abram gets to Canaan, and God appears to Abram, and he says, "To your descendants I will give this land." So now he's promised him not just one descendant, but descendants, and he's promised to give a photobomb. God's promised to give those descendants the land where Abram was standing. So now there's land and there's descendants. It's not just that, somehow your tribe or whoever you're leading is going to become a nation, and or maybe your policies and your following me is going to become this kind of national policy, and it's going to form a country and take land. No, there's no caveats here now. You are going to have descendants, and they're going to have this land. But how many descendants? Are they just going to be the rulers of the land? Are they going to be the kings? And, there's still a lot of room. And Abram doesn't have the information that he would need to try to make it happen, to make the things happen that God's promising. And he sees, he's still really vague on it. He doesn't know how God's going to do it. He can't act on that yet. But here, he starts to follow God, what he does know about what God has told him more closely. What has God told him? He said to leave his father's house. He said to follow me. He said to to go out and I will show you the land. But he told him to leave his father's house. He still had Lot with him. So here goes Lot. He goes away. Abram stays in the mountains away from the sinful people of Sodom. And so God honors that. He doesn't just honor it because Abram's earned it. It's because Abram's ready to hear what God's got for him now. So he turns around and he turns around from doing this horrible, scary thing, and he's traveling, and all of a sudden God comes to him. Boom. He says, Abram, let me tell you more of the story that's going to happen. You're going to have so many descendants, nobody can count them. Count the dust that's under your feet. You can't, nobody can, and that's how many descendants you're going to have. That's the kind of nation that's going to be. There's no wiggle room in this. I'm telling you straight up. You follow me. You trust me. Don't go trying to get lots of descendants. Don't do that, Abram. You've got your faith in me now. Keep it in me. I'll make this happen because it's going to happen my way, and you're going to be serving me, and you're going to go forward in faith, and that's how this is going to work. And you know what? Abram doesn't make it in that sense, but God is God. He's a forgiver. He's a forgiving God. We can anger him, but he's a forgiving God, and he will call us back over and over and over again because he's gracious and he loves us, and he gives us chances over and over again even when we don't deserve them. And that's what he does for Abram, but not in the next chapter. In the next chapter something really cool happens, so I'll see you in the next video. In the meantime, remember, God only gives us as much information as we can handle, but because of that, he expects us to go out on faith even when we don't have all the information. Hold on to that, and remember to pursue him, and not the knowledge that you're looking for. Well, I shouldn't say that. Remember to pursue him, not knowledge of the future he has planned for you, because he'll reveal that as you obey him and grow in your faith with him. Absolutely pursue knowledge. The Bible says knowledge is wonderful and wisdom is beautiful, and you should pursue both. But don't worry about the future. God's got that, and he'll tell you what you need to know. He'll give you everything you can handle when it comes to knowledge of what he's doing with you and in your life. So, trust him, pursue him, seek his wisdom, seek his knowledge. But don't be scared of the future, because God's got that. All right. See you on the next video. God bless.